Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Afterthought, where we talk all things mental health and real life. My name is Roxanne Francis, and tonight we are talking about pandemic parenting and taking care of your children. How are the children doing? Let me know how you guys are managing with your kids. How are they doing? How are they functioning? How are you doing? Are they displaying any challenging behaviors? Are they struggling? Are they acting out? Have they had any significant changes? Let me know how your kids are doing. Let me just turn this right down so we can get right into it. I'm not going to keep you for very long tonight, but I do want to give you lots of useful information. So it doesn't matter how old your children are, whether or not they are toddlers or whether or not they are 17, 18 years old with a job at Tim Hortons and a driver's license. This pandemic is wearing on the minds of our children. And I thought, hey, Nicole, hi, everyone. Hey, Andrea, I thought I would do a live on this tonight because over the past 2 weeks, I've had a lot of people come to me and ask me about parenting in this pandemic and how it's impacting their children. I've had different organizations reach out to me. I've done lunch and learns. I have spoke to people on different podcasts. I was on a radio show yesterday just talking about how this is all impacting the children. Sue says they have lots of energy and you don't know how to get them to be physical. Yes. And I can even share just on a personal note that, hey everyone, I'll share on a personal note that, even in my family, I have a child who is starting to show the weight of the pandemic is starting to show on him there as well. So let's start talking about how, and if you have any questions, by all means, put them in the question box and I'll try to get to them. But let's talk about how this pandemic is impacting the children. So children, especially the younger ones, they don't know how to say, I'm anxious. They don't know how to say, I'm worried. They sometimes they may not know how to say, this is really bothering me. Little kids know happy, sad. If they talk about scared, they may talk about being scared of monsters under the bed or whatever, but they don't know how to say this pandemic is scaring me, and so that can be challenging for them. So my first statement to you is talk to your children. Ask them how they're doing. And when I say ask them, I don't mean say to a 5-year-old, are you feeling anxious? Because they won't know what to tell you. I would say, do you think that this pandemic is bothering you? Right? How is life? How are things different for you now? If you could, in therapy, we talk about the magic question, right? If you could change anything about this pandemic, what would you change? And just listen for the answers. I know in our home, the answer would be, we would make it go away tomorrow. And then my follow-up question is, well, what would you go back to if you could make it go away tomorrow? What's the thing that you are looking forward to the most? And hear what it is that they have to say. Sometimes they'll talk about things like getting back to their sporting activities, having birthday parties again, going back to hugging their cousins and seeing their relatives, going out to dinner with their family. My kids, they're really upset that Canada's Wonderland is not open, right? And they know that it's not open because of the pandemic. They're really mad at this pandemic, right? So talk to your kids. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming through. Talk to your kids about how are they doing? What is it that they don't like about it? If they're really angry, what are you angry at? The other thing to look at is how have their behaviors changed? You are looking at your children for a change in their behavior. So for example, hey Bailey, are they having now a harder time falling asleep? A lot of kids are now struggling to sleep, but the parents are not able to really note that it's probably because of this pandemic while they're struggling. And a lot of parents will think that it's just their kids that are struggling, but children across the board are having problems with this. So children are having a harder time falling asleep, or they may need you to sit, at the edge of their bed with them, or even lay down with them so that they could fall asleep, where before they were falling asleep much easier, right? Last February, last March, they were falling asleep a lot easier, and now it's difficult. You're looking for, especially in teenagers, hey Kayla, especially in teenagers, are they having trouble getting out of bed? I know we know that teenagers love their sleep, but outside of the norm, right? If you had to think about last year, last spring, last winter, how is their behavior different now? A lot of teenagers will tend to stay in their rooms quite often, and that's quite normal, right? It's developmentally appropriate for teenagers to pull away from the adults, right? They are in that stage where they're becoming little adults themselves, and they are they're turning more to their peers than they are to you, and they're getting advice from God knows whom. But hey Rachel, they're getting their advice from God knows whom, and they think that suddenly we know nothing. But that's okay. That's what's supposed to happen, right? But if you are finding now that they're not eating, or they're eating far too much, or they're not sleeping, or they're sleeping all the time, or they're neglecting their hygiene altogether, they're not showering, they're not brushing their hair, they're not brushing their teeth, they won't get out of bed, they are skipping school, they're supposed to be in virtual school but they haven't signed on in days, their grades are slipping. These are things that it's happening for many children, so it's not just your family. In the webinar that I was in yesterday, some staff members were asking me things like, one person said they noticed that their child is now washing their hands very, very often, to the point of their hands being raw. They're fearful of going outside. They're worried about this pandemic and worried about getting sick. So, for the children who are worried about being ill and are obsessed now with cleanliness, I would talk to them about, first of all, I would say that comes out of a need for feeling like they have some control. What has happened for the children and for the adults too is that this pandemic has taken away our control. We can't go where we want to go. We can't leave our homes without wearing these masks. We're having to wash our hands all the time. Hand sanitizer is our best friend, right? The world has changed and people are very cautious about being sick. But there is a fine line between being cautious and being fearful. And we are not trying to get the children to become fearful. So let's talk to them about, first of all, acknowledging with them that, a lot of control is now out of their hands. Hey guys, thanks for joining me. A lot of control is now out of their hands, right? And, but we're trying to do the things to keep ourselves safe. So I always talk about changing the phrase what if and looking at it from a place of what is. So for example, children will say things like, what if I go outside and I get sick? What if I go outside and someone sneezes on me? What if I get COVID-19? Hey Jackie, what if I get COVID-19 and I bring it home to the family? What if, mommy gets sick and she dies? Like all these questions around what if, right? I would offer to the children, change the what if phrase to what is. What do we know that is true right now? What is it that we do actually have control over? Well, let's see. We have control over standing away from people when we go outside, so we can socially distance, and that can keep us safe. We have control over droplets that get into our space because we wear a mask to protect ourselves from that. And so we have control over keeping ourselves safe to a large extent. Yes, COVID-19 exists, But as a lot of the doctors on TV and on the radio will tell us, that if we follow a lot of these safety protocols, then chances are you will do fine. So if you're wearing your mask, if you're social distancing, and yes, if you're keeping yourself clean. Now, let's talk about the excessive washing of the hands, if that's ever a thing for any of you, or for the kids. I would give them something to do with their hands for when they feel like they need to wash those hands. So I would go out and buy some sour candy, right? And whenever you feel the urge to wash your hands, put some sour candy in your mouth. And remind that, first of all, the sour candy, it gives you something to do, but the candy is so sour that it becomes a huge distraction from needing to wash your hands, right? And then remind yourself, oh, I just washed my hands 10 minutes ago and I haven't gone anywhere in those last 10 minutes, so I'm probably still clean, right? So that's something that you can do. In terms of anxiety around this pandemic, one of the things that I will say is that as adults, we have the benefit of life experience, because you don't get to 30, 35, 40, 45 without going through some stuff. We've been through some hard things. And when you have gone through hard things, then you know that I can get through that and I can come out on the other side. The reason that a lot of us are managing this pandemic fairly well is because we expect to come out of this thing on the other side. Young people and children, on the other hand, they don't have as much life experience as we have. And what they have right now is this moment. A lot of them have never been through a hard thing, so they can't see through to the other side. So they are really petrified with what's happening right now. If you are a constant person in their life and you are calm, then they will borrow your calm from you. So I would, first of all, check yourself. How are you feeling? How are you presenting yourself to the children? Oftentimes when I work with kids who are anxious, when I peel back the layers, I realize that parents are also anxious. And kids start to pick up, oh, there's something to worry about. Well, I better get worried. And so kids worry when they see their parents worried. When that person who is supposed to keep you safe is worried about safety, then you start worrying about your own safety, right? So as a parent, you need to think about, how are you feeling about all of this? And how do you communicate that to your children? Is your TV onto the news all the time? Do you know all the statistics? Are you always listening to the radio? Are you always talking about the numbers of incidents of COVID-19 in your area? Kayla says, I'm exhausted from keeping myself regulated. So much stamina. Yes, it is exhausting. But we do it for the children that we love, right? But for those of you who are always up on the statistics and always up on the news and always up on all that stuff, I would encourage you to turn the television off. I would encourage you to find something else to talk about, to distract the children, help them to realize that they don't have to have it top of mind all the time. Because if it's always top of mind for you, you're communicating to them that there is something to worry about. So let's talk about children and aggression. Oftentimes, aggression comes from a place of worry, frustration, fear of missing out. Hey, somebody. Fear of missing out, worrying that you are being left out. And often anger can also come from a place of having to keep it in altogether for a very long time. So for example, if children are in school all day, if they're in person learning all day, then they are keeping their little bodies and minds together. They're trying not to get dysregulated at school because their peers are going to look at them funny. They're going to get disapproval from their teacher. So what happens? They come home from school and then they melt down in front of us. They leave all of that for us because we are their safe space. So they're not being angry and mean towards you for the sake of being angry and mean. They are expressing their worry and their frustration. It's very frustrating to want to go to your favorite play place, but it's closed due to COVID-19. It's very frustrating. Mommy, can we go to McDonald's and sit inside? No, we can't sit inside. The inside of the restaurant is closed due to COVID-19. There are so many things that we can't do. We can't have play dates. They can't hang out with their friends. They can't do a many number of things because of COVID-19. And it's really upsetting. It's really frustrating. And I was saying to the parent group yesterday that it really is from what they're experiencing is grief. Many of us are experiencing grief because we have lost the capability to live our lives the way that we've been used to. And we've lost it for a really long time. And we don't know when we're getting it back. Children don't do very well with ambiguity. They do well with routine and structure and knowing what's coming next. It keeps them feeling safe. Kayla says, is there a gauge of normal aggression in response to COVID and signs of something more going on and maybe aggravated by COVID? So, you know your kitty's best. How long has this aggression been going on? Did they kind of come out of the womb like this? Did it start when they were 2 years old and then it just never left them? Then maybe you have a sensitive child, a child who's a little bit high strung, a child who reacts to their environment a little bit more than the rest of your children or your friends' children. And then it's probably aggravated on top of that by COVID-19. In terms of normal aggression, that varies from child to child. I have 2 little boys and I have one who is as cool as a cucumber. Nothing bothers him. And then the other one, like every minute there's something, right? He goes from being happy to being very, very sad to being very, very angry, and everybody finds out about it. So it really does depend on the temperament of the child. Kayla says he totally came out of the womb like this. And yes, he's definitely, he's high strung, right? He's sensitive. So that's something that you want to keep in mind, right? But definitely I would be having conversations with him about just how unfair it feels and how it sucks to not be able to do all the fun things that they would like to do, and to not be able to go to the places that you'd like to take them and do the things that we used to do before all of this started to happen, and just help them hold their grief, get them active as well. It's another thing that we can try to do. Getting them physically active can help to dispel some of the angst that's trapped inside of their little bodies. Getting them to run around, getting them to, you're welcome, getting them to run around, getting them to get really rambunctious and physical and tickle fights and cartwheels and all those things, the gross motor skill movement, right? Those are some things that you would want to incorporate in their lives as well. Getting them creative, getting them drawing and coloring and painting. Kayla, I know you're all over that, which is awesome. And role playing, right? Doing a little bit of what in therapy we call externalizing. So for example, giving your child some markers or crayons and saying, draw me a picture of COVID-19. Let's give it a weird, wacky name, and then let's make a cartoon about it. Or I had a session once with a little girl. We made Play-Doh replicas of COVID-19, and we made it really, really ugly because she was really mad at it. And then at the end, we smashed it because we really hate COVID-19, right? And that helped her get some of her aggression out. The other thing that I would say is that children need play. And it's really hard, especially if they have, Kayla says, we drew our inside angry monsters last week. Love it. Exactly, right? But again, children need play. It's how they process the world. It's how they process their feelings. It's how they practice maturing conversation. It's the role play and playing with each other and disagreeing with each other and learning how to resolve conflict and all that stuff. But if the kids are locked indoors all the time because of this virus, then they're missing out on a lot of that. Hey, Lori, they're missing out on a lot of that that play and all those possibilities. So I would you know, in keeping with all the rules and regulations around COVID-19, I would try to organize some play dates. Now, play dates doesn't necessarily mean that the kids are in each other's space like this. I was saying on the radio interview yesterday that toddlers, for example, they don't play with each other. Yes, I'm gonna post it so you can go do the thing that you need to do. Don't worry, I will post it. Children who are really small, they don't really interact with each other when they play. They do what is called parallel play. So they might sit next to each other or sit around each other. Hey, Nicole. They might sit within the same room with each other and they might play with blocks, but they're not necessarily playing with each other. So for children who might be too young to wear masks or are tempted to pull them down, if they're socially distancing in the same room with a child who you want to incorporate in your bubble, then that's fine. For children who are older, you know, thankfully spring seems like it's on its way. They can go for socially distant bike rides. If they have a friend who has a pet, or if you have a pet, they can go grab the friend and they can go for a walk with the dog, keeping their distance. That's totally possible. They can play outside with their masks on. You know, I'm not trying to tell you to forego the rules. That is not what I'm saying at all. You need to ensure that you keep those safety precautions up. But it is important that they interact with each other in a safe but meaningful way. I am happy to share, just for the sake of transparency, so that you guys know that you're not alone. Hey guys, hey Natasha, that my older child started to develop some psychosomatic issues recently. And what that means is that you have emotional issues that are manifesting itself in physical ways, right? Was having a really bad tummy ache for about 3 weeks, spent a couple days home from school. I couldn't work. And, you know, we called the doctor, we did some telephone consults, we even went to the pediatric after hours clinic. They did the tests. They tested him for urinary tract infection, none of those things. And then one day, as I was driving to school to pick him up half day, because he called and said his stomach was hurting him really, really badly, it just dawned on me that, hold on, this little pitney is stressed out. This little boy is having symptoms of anxiety. Nicole says, our youngest found a friend at the playground. When they closed the park, he was devastated. Oh no. Oh man. Nicole, do you know the child's mother? Any idea where they might live? If you run into them in the neighborhood, I would definitely talk to the parent and find out if they're open to some walks together in the neighborhood. But yeah, my kid was having some really bad stomach aches, and it just kind of clued in. I'm like, Roxanne, you do this for a living. How come you didn't figure this out before? So I picked him up. We got in the car, and on the way home, I said to him, did you know that sometimes when people have things that are causing them stress, it can give them headaches or tummy aches? And he says, no, mommy, I didn't know that. And I said to him, because he's a very active child, like this kid is in every sport conceivable, because that's just how he's wired. And he's a very social child. Like he is the social butterfly, just like his father. But I said to him, is COVID-19 bothering you? And he before I could finish the sentence, he was like, yes. And so we were working on a rating scale to see how badly his tummy was hurting him. So in the morning, I'd be like, how bad is it out of 10? And he would say 7 or 8. And so I said to him, let's scale how badly COVID-19 is bothering you. And he said, out of 10? And I said, yes. And before I said yes, he was like, 10. And then he said, no, 50. The scale is broken. And so we had a little chuckle about that. But we came home and we sat down and we had a really long talk about the things that he really missed in his life. He goes to a small school and they cohort the children so the whole school doesn't go out for recess at the same time. So he misses the children in the other grades from him, right? And he It bothers him that he can't see everybody's face, and it bothers him that he can't have play dates with his friends. And so we started talking about, okay, let's pick 2 children that we might, who have small families, that we might feel comfortable bubbling with, not the Jamaican kind of bubble, but having in our social bubble. And we also talked about what kind of sports we can get them back into. He used to do swimming, but the program that he's in is closed. But I have a friend who is very, very sporty, and her children are into all kinds of sports. So I reached out to her and I said, what kind of sports are you guys doing? And she said, well, our swim club is open and they're doing all of the... Nicole, you want a Jamaican bubble? I can't help you with that. She said that this swim club follows all of the safety protocols, and they recently opened up. So I got on the phone with them right away, and the kids are starting swimming on Saturday. Then I went into our town's community website and I signed them up for soccer, outdoor soccer. It doesn't start until May, but we got to get something going. And, he already is starting to feel a little bit better, knowing that he has something to look forward to. So I encourage you to sit and just talk with your children. Find out what's bothering them. The teenagers, sometimes they don't want to talk to you. And, sit on the edge of their bed. Hey, Val, sit on the edge of their bed and ask them how they're doing, right? It doesn't have to be a very long conversation, but let them know that the door is always open. And try not to let that conversation go down a bad rabbit hole. Don't start off by saying, I love you, tell me what's really wrong. And then it turns out into, well, if you'd come out of your room every once in a while, then you wouldn't feel like, let's forego that. And let us ensure that we are creating a safe space for them to talk. They may not want to talk to you right away, but if you let them know that the door is always open and that you are a soft place where they can land, eventually they might find their way into your bedroom, one evening to talk, or they might come in the kitchen and, ask if you need any help. You would be surprised, right? Yes, Nicole, don't let it go into a bad place. Do things with your teenager where they don't have to look at you face to face. It makes the talking easier. Your teenager, your young adult, if you wash and they dry, or if, you guys are doing like a 500-piece puzzle where they can focus on something else, or you go for a long drive and they can look out the window but still talk to you. It opens the door for them to talk to you a little bit more freely. If they refuse to talk to you, do you have a best friend or a close family friend that they feel connected with, right? Then you can say to them, if you don't feel like talking to me, then talk to Nicole, right? She's more than happy or more than willing to talk. And then let Nicole know that so-and-so might be calling you. I told them that it was fine for them to call you, right? And if that friend doesn't hear from them in a while, then they can text them and check in. Hey, how's it going? How is school? Blah, 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 blah. Nicole says, that's so true. When my older boys are distracted, they talk my ear off. Exactly. But if you sit across from them, you get nothing, right? And if the teenagers still won't talk, slip them the number for Kids Help Phone. Put it into their phone. They have a teen chat, a teen text line. If the kids won't open up to you. There's also another website called The Big White Wall, I think it is. Nicole Davis, if you're still on here, let me know if that's what you remember it to be called. I believe it's called The Big White Wall. Google it. That's another option. Nicole says, yes, we have safe people in our village that are pre-approved for the kids to go to. Yes, it's the best way to go. That way they're getting sound advice, because if they go to all their little friends, you'd be surprised at what they're going to come out with, right? You want to ensure that your kids are getting good, sound advice. The other thing that I will say is kids thrive when they have routine. It keeps them feeling safe and secure because they know what's coming next. Hey, Aisha, they know what's coming next. So, let's give them some routine. Let's give them some structure. And I don't necessarily mean schedule, right? In my world, I feel like there's a difference between schedule and routine. Schedule means 8 o'clock this, 8:30 that, 9 o'clock this, 9:30 that. We are living in a world that's a little bit more fluid these days. But what we don't want is for your adolescents and your teenagers and your young adults staying up till 5 o'clock in the morning playing Call of Duty, and then they can't function or go to school the next day. So what you need to do is negotiate with them. What is a reasonable time for you to get up out of your bed? Ensure that you know, if it means on a Saturday you get up out of your bed before noon, then that's fine. You're going to eat breakfast at a reasonable hour. You're going to have 3 square meals a day, right? You are going to go out and go for a walk. You are going to do these things to ensure that your life flows in a regular way. Nicole says I'm teaching. You know, you want to ensure that that their lives flow so that they can feel secure, so that they know that their lives have some kind of structure and they have an idea of what's coming next. Otherwise, no one can function, and nobody wants that, right? Again, I want you to keep an eye on your kids. Look around. Have their moods significantly changed over the past year? When, you know, we were told last year this time that we were going to stay home for 2 weeks, everybody was like, yeah, 2-week vacation. And then it turned into a much longer scenario, right? People thought maybe 4 months, then people thought maybe 6 months. No, it's a whole year. And so what we've been doing to maybe cope for 6 months, now we feel like we can't cope anymore. So have you seen their behaviors and their moods slipping as you, hey Janice, have you seen their moods slipping as time has worn on? Nicole says the kids go for walks after online class. Yes. It was too cold, so we told them not to go, but they insisted. They thrive on routine. Yes, yes, yes. Once you give them routine and structure, it's something that doesn't really leave them, right? And it helps them to set themselves, it helps them become set up for success. What else was I going to say? Yes, as Nicole mentioned, the walks. Kids, people in general, we store anxiety in our bodies, right? That's why when we get really anxious, our tummy gets in knots, our hands shake, our legs tremble, our voice wavers, it all gets stored in our bodies. The best way to do that is to become physical. Go out for walks, do some stretches. If you're into yoga, do that. If you can find some aerobic classes online, do that. If you want to go for a jog, do that. Get the kids up and out, get the bikes out, do something, move your body. The more you sit in one place or have them lay in their bed hour after hour, day in, day out, the more the depression and the anxiety is going to set in. Get them to drink some water, buy some fruits. It can't just be Doritos all day. It is not a food group, right? Let's have them eat some healthy things and talk to them about how this is challenging, but we're doing the best that we can. Keep in mind that they've lost all of their coping mechanisms. You have lost many of your coping mechanisms, whether it was that you would connect with your friends or go to church on Sunday or go for a coffee or, you know, go get your nails done or whatever it was that you would do to relax, go for a movie once a month. We don't have that available to us anymore. And they don't have their things available to them anymore. So we have to get creative, right? Once a month, do a cook-off at home. Call your aunt that lives in Florida and send her a cookie recipe, and let's pick a day in the week that we're all going to do that cookie recipe together, right? Your aunt in Florida and you and the kids, and show the pictures on the iPad of whose cookie came out the best, right? My husband has siblings flung all over the world, and once a month they sit down on Zoom and they connect, right? And it brings everybody together, and all the nieces and the nephews and our kids get really excited to see their cousins. And so I encourage you to try to stay connected. Community is going to get us through this. Community, routine, talking to people at home, talking to the kids. Hey, Rashida. I'm just about wrapping up. So let me just kind of give the Coles notes. So it is not just you. Everybody is feeling it. It is not just your kids. a lot of children are feeling it. Even if the kids next door look like they're holding it in better than your crazy clan, everyone is feeling it. Everyone is feeling the weight of how long we've had to be holding this in, and people are beginning to crack under the pressure. It is okay. We can get through this. Keep in mind that as adults, we have been through hard things before, so we know that there will be another side of this. Young people, young adults, children, they haven't been through anything hard before. So for them, this is the ultimate. They can't see to the other end of this, right? Yes, Cabrina, the importance of the tribe. Young people can't see through to the other side of this pandemic, or what it could potentially look like, and so they're stunned. They're devastated. They don't know what to make of this. So you have to try to comfort them. You have to try to normalize how they're feeling, help them realize that what they're going through is normal given the circumstances. Then you are going to talk with them. What's going on for you? How can I help you? You might get, leave me alone. Well, that's okay. They don't have to talk to you. But like Nicole said, do you have pre-approved family friends that they can turn to if they don't want to talk to you? Because if they're going to talk to their 15-year-old friends, they're going to get foolishness. You and I know that. Get physical, get them moving, go for walks, dance parties, tickle fights, baking, cooking, exercise, yoga, stretches. Get it done. What else? They might be fearful of getting sick, and that is because they feel like they've kind of lost control over, their wellness. Help them to realize that they do have some control. If they do wear their mask, if they're vigilant about social distancing, if they wash their hands when they come in from outside, these are some things that will help keep them well and safe. And so that's something that you want to have a discussion with them about. People need each other, and children need to be around other children. That being said, we do need to be safe. But it doesn't mean that you have to keep everyone cooped up inside forever. Yes, we were in a lockdown, but most of us are out of it now. So I would encourage you to find at least one other family who you deem to be COVID safe and create a bubble. If it means that the kids can play on the playground, but create a bubble where your child can interact with another child, because it is going to be healthy for their mental stimulation. Keep in mind that children who are experiencing anxiety and depression over this pandemic scenario, they may not be able to express that to you, and sometimes it can show up in different physical ways. It can show up in headaches. It can show up in tummy aches. Someone said to me yesterday in a lunch and learn that their child is having difficulty swallowing. Cabrina says, my daughter does counseling and coaching with the women in my tribe. Yes. The women in your circle, in your community, if they can extend mothering to your children, that's extremely, extremely helpful. What was I saying? Just ensure that your children are surrounded by people who support them. Connect with other young people. See if they can go for social distance bike rides. When they're bike riding, they're not close to each other. They can go for walks. Thankfully, it seems like spring is almost on its way. When in the summertime last year, my kids had two friends over and they would play hide and seek in the yard. You don't have to be up close, but it was so much fun. He climbed a tree and he hid, and they couldn't find him for a long time. He was stoked. But get your kids to see if they can connect and play with others. I think it's really, really important. The one last thing that I will say is be mindful of screen time. Everyone is having an overdose of screen time in this pandemic because we don't have very many options. For children who are doing virtual school, get them to step away from the computer a few times a day to take breaks. Nicole O'Simon was on here earlier, and she said that her kids, they take breaks because it's a part of their routine, right? It's really, really important for them to disengage from the screen and get off the screens at least an hour before bed, because everyone's sleep is tremendously disturbed these days because of this pandemic. Cabrina says, meditation, open communication, and speaking freely is greatly encouraged over here. It sounds like you have got it down very well, Pat, over there, Cabrina. I am really, really happy to hear that. So that's where I'm going to leave you with that, you guys. Our children are looking to us for guidance on how to get through this. We can do it. And if you are completely stressed out about this, then reach out for support. In the lunch and learn that I was in yesterday, one of the questions came up that said, you know, I remember it. She said, the person said, I have never been so stressed out in my entire life. How do I know when it's appropriate to access counseling? And I'm like, that's your clue right there. If you've never been so stressed out in your entire life, that's a clue that you need to go and access support. I understand that therapy is expensive. There are community organizations out there that offer counseling for little or no money, and there are a lot of therapists out there who have sliding scale. Find out if your job has benefits and see if they will cover any of it, but get yourself some help, because if you are balanced, you're going to be able to help your children find balance. You know what I mean? All right, wonderful people. It was really, really great hanging out with you tonight. You guys take care. Take care of yourselves. Hey, I'm just wrapping up, but I am going to put this live in my IGTV because I want you all to have access to the information. And yes, you can get a therapist through your family doctor. So definitely do that. If you feel like your child's behavior is totally outside of your scope of being able to help them, pick up the phone and call the doctor. That's what they're there for. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer you. Slide into my DMs. I can't offer you therapy over DM, but I can definitely answer a question or two. You guys take care. Have yourselves a wonderful night. Thanks, Andrea. You guys take care. Take care of your mind. You only have one. See you next Wednesday. Bye.